Am I wrong for audibly saying bruh when my sister announced she was pregnant again? I, female 16, am a younger sister to Lori, 26, female. Me and Lori have never been close since we had different dads, and I was an affair baby, so she always resented me for ruining her family, but whatever. The thing is, Lori has 6 kids. Yes, 6. Twin boys Beck and Joe who are 7 and were planned. A girl, Liliana, who's 6 unplanned, another girl, Angel, who's 5 planned, another boy, Keith, who's 2 planned, and another baby boy, Carl, who's 9 months and not planned. Despite the fact that Lori is incapable of taking care of these kids, 4 of them were actually planned because she knows my pushover mom will give her money and watch the kids. My mom even quit her job to do so, even turning her workroom into a nursery for Carl. I will say we're pretty well off, but we can't do this forever. And listen, I try not to judge and just ignore Lori just like she does me. Am I wrong for audibly saying bruh when my sister announced she was pregnant again? I try not to judge and ignore, but I'm the one that always has to step in and help, especially with the twins. Well, tonight at dinner, Lori's boyfriend, father to Carl, as well as Lori's father ended up joining. I thought nothing of it until my sister said she had exciting news, and I wish she'd say something else, but I knew she was going to say I'm pregnant. And when she did, everybody was silent until I said, bruh. I didn't mean to say it out loud, but come on. Lori gave me a death stare and said if I wanted to say something, I should. I said, you know we can't keep supporting you. Without mom, you'd be on the street, and you know that. Look at mom, she's so tired. She's always taking care of your kids, and so am I. I bet that I've changed more diapers than you have, you selfish, B word. That's when she began to cry and ran out into her boyfriend's car, and he followed her and drove. That's when my mom started to cry and went and put Carl back to bed since he woke up. And Lori's father yelled at me too. Am I wrong for warning my friend about my ex, who she's now engaged to, and telling her stop complaining when I warned her? I, 25 female, met Dave, 26 male, in college, and we dated and everything was great. So great that we got engaged and moved in together. Well, within 10 months, I realized he had a serious issue with self-gratification, laziness, and some other stuff. Well, Sue, 25 female, has been my friend for years and was supposed to be my maid of honor. She was upset about the breakup, but one day called and said Dave asked her out. This was a few months after the breakup. I'm not a gatekeeper, so I just said, Sue, he's not a great guy. You're like a sister to me, and I wouldn't want my sister involved in the same situation. I said, hey, I'm not perfect either, but the relationship was far from balanced and was so toxic, and the ring or apartment didn't help. She's a grown woman, so I said, do what you want, but I just needed to tell you. She said she understood, and a week later they were dating. Am I wrong for warning my friend about my ex, who she's now engaged to, and telling her to stop complaining when I warned her? I decided to remove myself. I blocked my ex and saw he messaged me on socials, but blocked and deleted all of it. Now it's a year and a half later. Side note, I caught my ex trying to mess with my birth control once, which made my sex drive and trust fall. He wants kids, yet can't bring himself to shower more than 1 in 3 days. She called me crying. They're now engaged with the ring I gave back to him, and she's pregnant. He doesn't help with the house and pays little on bills, and literally told her to go donate blood if she's worried about money. I let her cry for an hour about how he's lazy and refuses to work, his negative attitude, and how he's inappropriately texting bots online. She even retold stories that I told her of what he did to me. It felt numb to listen to it, and I just thank God it wasn't me. I said I told you this would happen when you started dating, and she hung up, and it wasn't snappy, just honest. Am I wrong?
My wife wants me to sell the business that I love because I'm away 4 months a year. So my wife, 35, and I, 42 male, have been together for 14 years. This year, after 9 years of university and residency, she's officially an MD, anesthesiology, which is why it took 9 years. I'm incredibly proud of her. Now, I'm a tuna fisherman and charter owner. I own 2 boats and licenses through my company. I bought the first license at 21 and the second at 25. Both are now paid off. I make a very good living. I charge $2,000 a day for tuna fishing, per person up to 5 clients per day from July 15th to November 15th, and I'm booked at least a year in advance. But the money, while obviously important, is in the draw for me. This is truly my passion. It's the only job I've ever known, and I can't imagine my life without it. I left this year the first week of July, as I always do, but this year my wife has started insisting that I start thinking about selling the licenses and boats because she feels it's time to start a family and that since she's a doctor, I should sell them to stay home, raise our children, and be home all year. I told her in no uncertain terms that I love her. I want children with her, but I am not now, or for the foreseeable future, selling my business or giving up the business that I have loved since I first went tuna fishing with my father when I was 12. I would be miserable without it. Now, I want to be clear, my wife has no power over my business. I got an ironclad prenup to protect my business and my home and property before we got married. It doesn't protect our personal assets or accounts. She'd still be entitled to half of our savings. And it's not like my wife was hard done by. She didn't pay a penny for her education. I footed the bill to the tune of hundreds of thousands. I paid for our home, bought her a vehicle to travel to school with, so there's no financial abuse on my part. Her issue with my job is that I'm not home for 4 months a year. We live in Ontario, Canada, but my charter boats are on the southeastern shore of Nova Scotia, and that my job is dangerous. She knew both of these things from our very first date. My wife is adamant that she wants this done, and it just isn't happening. She keeps saying how she'll be busy as a doctor and she can't be home to raise the kids, but personally, I don't see how that's any different from my situation. Aside from me actually having 8 months of a year off, I'm not sure why she thinks that I should give up my dream job now that she has attained hers. Personally, I feel like she's ashamed to tell her new snooty work friends that I'm a fisherman, even though I make as much or more as they do, as this literally began as soon as she started her new job and started hanging around with much higher class people. A class of people that I'm not fond of, but I would never tell her who to have as friends. She denies this, but the way that she suddenly altered her friend circle and started fighting with me about this as soon as she finished her residency and started her new job with her new friends tells me otherwise. She also has expressed interest in selling our property, 120 acres, to move to a condo in the city, and that's another area I just won't compromise. I did offer to her that we could look at buying a condo and living there during winters, but I'm not selling my property. She also doesn't want to accept that. I'm willing to compromise, but this is my home and we can afford it. I am not giving it up. When I'm not working, I'm hunting and fishing, sport fishing, not commercial fishing as my career. It's my favorite place in the world that is in the Atlantic Ocean. I have no intention of retiring for at least another 25 years, and when I do, I plan to give the licenses and gear to my son from a previous relationship. And the reason that I built this business to begin with, I never wanted my son to see me as a failure. He's 20 and is a mate on my second boat. My wife seems to think that I'm an a-hole because I want to be gone from her for 4 months a year. And because with my investment portfolio and business worth millions of dollars, I absolutely could retire and live well. I think she's the a-hole because she seems to think that I should be miserable in order to make her happy. I'm honestly not sure that my marriage can survive this, but there's absolutely no chance in hell that I'm selling my business or retiring. But am I wrong here? Am I the a-hole? I literally spent a decade making her life as easy as possible it could be. I'm in no way saying med school is easy, but she finished with no debt or responsibility outside of the home. Few med students can say that. I also feel there's been a big change in the way that she looks at me and my profession ever since she became a doctor. The profession that paid for her to get where she is today. I am who I am, a country boy who had a dream to make a living doing something that he loved. I feel like she feels that having a fisherman husband is embarrassing now that she's a doctor. My ex-girlfriend wants to place our baby for adoption and I'm not sure if I can. I'm 23, my ex-girlfriend is 20. We met in college. I've since graduated, but she has 2 years left. She's 21 weeks pregnant and wants to put the baby up for adoption. She was around 14 weeks pregnant when she told me that she was pregnant. We had already broken up 2 months before that, and I honestly had no idea she was pregnant. She said that she needed space to make her own decision, and then that's why she didn't tell me. From the moment she told me she was pregnant, I told her that I would support whatever decision she made. I respect that it's her decision. I believe in a woman's right to choose and all that. I feel guilty that I got her pregnant. I'm internally panicking at the idea of a baby, and the idea of being a father is wild and unreal to me right now. But when she told me that she was planning to put the baby up for adoption, it felt like a gut punch. She's already connected with an adoption agency and is looking at possible adoptive families. In no way do I think that she should be forced to be a parent. I would never want to contribute to that. I completely understand her reasoning. It's just making me feel sick. She seems as content as she can be with the decision. She knows this is the right decision for her. I don't know if I can consent to it. I've started researching contested adoptions. I think it's sort of crazy and I'd have to be willing and prepared to completely support and parent the baby on my own and be able to prove it. I feel guilty thinking about coming in and ruining all of our plans. Maybe it wouldn't be fair to anyone for me to do that, but I'm becoming more uncomfortable with the idea of adoption every day. I haven't told her how I feel because I know it took her a while to come to her decision, and even though she feels it's the right one, it's also a highly emotional thing for her. I spend a lot of time trying to rationalize why adoption is the best thing for everyone, but I really don't know what to do. How should I, male 45, deal with my wife, 47 female, who would prefer working for minimum wage instead of using her law degree? For some important background, my wife has a chronic fatigue syndrome. She worked full-time for a few years after we got married. She's an attorney and was earning $75,000 a year. In 2010, however, her illness became too much to manage while also holding down a job, and for the next 9 years, I was the sole breadwinner in our family. We've paid roughly $500 each year for her to maintain her law license, even though she's not been using it. This has been an incredible strain, particularly once we added a couple kids. But during that time, I never pushed her to go back to work because I understood that it might be just too much for her to deal with. But 4 years ago, a mutual friend of ours asked my wife to occasionally spend a few hours per week helping out in a clerical role for minimum wage, and she agreed. This gradually turned into my wife working 15 to 20 hours a week and occasionally working as much as 35 hours in a week. She would come home utterly exhausted and would sleep through most of the following weekends. After a few months of this, I pointed out to her that she can physically manage regularly working in an office for that amount of time. Perhaps she should consider doing much more lucrative legal work instead. I noted that she could work from home, no need to get dressed up or deal with the commute, and that if she billed 5 hours per week, 1 hour per weekday, she could roughly double our household income. Even so, I only offered this as a consideration. I did not insist. Several opportunities have presented themselves over the past few years for her to resume work as a lawyer. Although she sometimes expressed minimal interest, she did not actually pursue any of them. When our friends ask, she continues to do clerical work at minimum wage. Last December, after a year of particularly acute financial stress, I finally put my foot down. I told my wife that the family needed her to start earning more money. A small wills and trust practice would be a low-pressure approach that would give her all the scheduling flexibility she could possibly need. I reiterated that I was only asking her to do work from home for 5 hours each week, and I offered to help her get started. I also started setting deadlines by which I would ask her for a report progress toward the goal of starting a new law practice. Over the first 6 months of this year, I know she has grudgingly made some effort to move in this direction, but still does not seem inclined to actually start doing legal work. I've about reached my wit's end. I love my wife and divorce is absolutely not an option, but I'm starting to really resent her unwillingness to take steps necessary to help carry the family's financial burden. I've used every gentle approach that I can think of to tell her how important this is to me. A couple weeks ago, I was literally about 10 minutes away from demanding that she find a marriage counselor for us to talk to, but I ended up pulling back last minute because I don't think that she would take that well, and I also feel like that's one of those bridges that, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. So I'm asking for advice.